Hi and welcome to the basement. Today we're going to fix Makita's best ever belt sander. This machine hails from an era when Makita, in my opinion, made some of the best power tools you could get. They were high quality, long lasting, and just made to be used and abused for years and years, and that's certainly what's happened to this belt sander. This is one of Makita's best belt sanders in my opinion. It takes a 100mm belt and it's just heavy duty, designed to last for years and years. As this one has done, but it's time to give it a bit of a freshen up. There's a few things wrong which I'll show you, and we'll get it shipshape and in tip-top condition again. So it's my second belt sander. This is my other belt sander I have, which is only a 76mm. It was designed for a 76mm belt, but it does have the 100mm bed on it, so it can take a 100mm belt. But this is only 850 watts versus 1040 watts, so more powerful motor. This also runs at 400 meters a minute, whereas this runs at 350 meters a minute, so slightly slower belt speed, which in my opinion is better because it generates less heat, especially when you're using an aggressive paper. So I have another channel which is a caravan repair channel at the moment, and I'm going to need this out on site where we're fixing up that caravan to sand the joins in the floor. So I thought it's a good time to get this unit fixed up and working again. So let's get started. What I really like about these older Makita tools is that they were just made so solid. You can tell it's a good quality version because it's made in Japan, and a lot of it is metal, so alloy. And just the bits that needed to be plastic were plastic, unlike today's Makita stuff, which is just like everything else, kind of cheap and nasty. So there's a few things wrong with this machine. Obviously we're going to need to replace the well, the slippery thing, I forget what that's called, the Teflon pad, and maybe that cork pad as well, although that doesn't seem too bad. But the worst thing about this machine is that the rubber wheel on the back has just disintegrated with age and heat. Like, it gets pretty warm when you're sanding for a long time, and just the heat and time, I think, has degraded the rubber, so it's all started to crack and obviously break apart, and it doesn't cause the belt to run true anymore. Also, the front wheel is quite stiff, so I'll have a look at the bearings in there, see if we can free that up and get that running right again. What else? Oh yeah, the lever is slightly bent, so you have to put quite a bit of force on that lever, and I think over time it's just got a slight bend in it, but I reckon we'll be able to just bend that straight again. Or it might not need it, we'll see. But the first thing we'll do, I think, is we'll take the bag off and start just pulling it apart. It's not too dusty. Sometimes this area in here can be a real dust trap. That's where it's supposed to suck the dust through and into the bag, and sometimes it can get all jammed up in here, but it looks pretty clear in there. Nevertheless, I will be cleaning as I go. Check the belt, it looks pretty good, no cracks. It doesn't look worn out, so that's a good sign. We'll keep that belt. Okay, big bit of grease in there. We don't want to get that grease too contaminated. Still pretty greasy, so that's a good sign. Hasn't dried out too much. I'm going to get, you can see all the sawdust build up in here over time. I'm going to go and get a vacuum and just give this a nice clean before I go any further. Okay, that's a bit cleaner. Right, the next step is to remove the low friction pad at the bottom there. It has a bit of metal stuck to it, which we're going to need later. And then we take off this cork pad, which it actually looks in pretty good condition, so I am going to reuse that again. I'd like to now just clean the grease off this cog so I can get down to that circlip and carefully remove the circlip.
making sure we don't lose it.
Note to self, there was 2 washers under the circlip. There you go. That's all the persuasion it needed. And there we have it. Ready to be replaced. So here we go, new roller. It's interesting that the roller's got a slight sort of a convex shape on it. I guess that helps keep the belt centered. Now before we put it on, we'll clean up everything else while we've got it off and pull apart the rest of this mechanism as well. Okay, that's the cog that's fallen out there, and it's got a little square key as well. You don't want to lose that or accidentally suck it up with a vacuum cleaner. So we'll put that aside, and we're going to need to put that back into the machine.
Now it's time just to do a proper clean of this area so we can put fresh grease in there when we reassemble. And we can start pulling apart the rest of the roller assembly.
Everything is sort of held together with springs here, so I don't really want to end up with a spring in my face. Ow! Yeah, that's what I didn't want to happen. Oh man. Back in a second. Okay, I'm back with a sticking plaster. Now that wasn't really part of the plan, but what is part of the plan is PCBWay. Let me tell you about them.
That's right, PCBWay does PCBs, but also sheet metal fabrication, 3D printing, and even CNC machining. Whatever crazy idea in your head can be turned into reality at PCBWay.com.
So thanks PCBWay for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get this off without any more injury, shall we?
To get this assembly out, we have to remove this pin on the bottom. It pivots on that pin, and without it, the whole lot will just slide off.
Great, we've got our front roller mechanism. Again, that's held in by a circlip, so now we can access it. We'll pull that off and take the pin out.
This is held in place by another circlip, which again, we're careful not to lose. And then it's just a matter of pushing that pin through, and it comes out pretty easy.
Well, I can't see any bearing in there. These look like they maybe are brass or something, so maybe it just runs straight onto that axle. So we can certainly see on the axle, it rotates around the axle because we can see where it's been polishing that axle. So that must be in the, would be the down position. That's taking a lot of the force when the weight of the machine's sitting on that, and the wheels rotating around it and just polishing it up shiny. So I guess that tells me there's no bearing in here. I can feel a slight lip on that, but I don't have another axle, so I'm going to grease it up and put it back in after I clean up this roller as well.
I want to pump in plenty of grease into the wheel just to minimize any friction on that axle.
I forgot, I want to straighten this, so I'm going to do that before I put the wheel back on. It's not a lot, it's just got a slight bend in it right here. That should do it.
Yeah, that's nice and straight now. It's going to work well. Right, time to put the axle through the greased up wheel. It's hard to push it through without pushing all the grease out, so I just try and twist it a bit as it goes through, just to try and keep as much grease in the wheel as I can. Then it's a simple matter of just cleaning it up a bit, throwing that circlip back on, and well, it's all done. I can do my best paint roller impression now. Lovely and smooth.
Right, got that off. So that bearing is pressed into this housing here. I wanted to get down to that bearing because it spins okay, but it just sounds a little dry to me, so I want to pop the neoprene cover off and just give it a bit of grease in there. So this reminds me back to my skateboarding days where we'd pop the covers of our bearings and would get special grease or some sort of concoction that we've invented to give us more speed. I don't know if it ever worked, but it made me not too shy about playing around with bearings. So provided we can get this cover off nice and carefully, then we'll be fine. And these bearings with the neoprene covers, they are easy to service. There we go, there's the cover. Great. Okay, I'm going to use this engine assembly lube, which is a moly graphite lube, and it's designed to put around your engine components before you reassemble an engine. Bearings included, so we're just going to put some in there. It's nice and thick. Pop our neoprene cover back on. Just like that. Too easy. It runs nice and smooth now. That should make it last for quite a bit longer.
After removing the brushes, I just tapped the rest of the motor through out of the housing so I can access the bearing on the rear of the shaft.
Right, so I hit the back with a wire brush and I could determine that that was actually a thread, and it looked like a reverse thread, and sure enough, if I go to screw it tighter, it actually will start coming off. So that was a good figure out there. Saved myself a bit of mucking around. And now we've got that pulley wheel off, we can see the bearing here. We'll be able to get to it, clean it up, and oil it just like the other one. Happy days.
And with it all oiled up, it goes back together without a hitch, and it's lovely and smooth now and so much quieter. Well, it's just a matter of putting it all back together now. So the motor and shaft go in, and with a few taps we can get it to locate into its housing. Next is the fan plate, and of course the fan, and then a few more taps just to get the bearing into the housing for this one as well.
There we go. Ah, lovely and quiet now. Yeah, that's made a big difference.
Time to fill the rear axle housing full of grease, and again I'm putting plenty in there because there's no bearings in these machines, and I want to get another 20 or 30 years out of this machine, so keeping the friction low is of benefit.
Big grease sausage on the end there.
Put a bit more grease around for good measure, and then we fit that cog again, and the circlip of course to hold everything together. There's two little washers under that circlip too. Bit more grease to finish it off, and the housing plate.
And this should just slot in nicely.
And it's all coming back together. Next we wind the belt back onto the pulleys, taking care not to get our sticking plaster jammed between it like that. So once that's on, I just clean the bottom of the machine before putting the cork and low friction pads back on the bottom.
Nice, well I think that actually finishes the repair. Now all that's left to do is to test it out. So this is my testing ground. It's an old caravan I'm renovating, which if you want to learn more about, you can check out here. But for now, we're going to test out the sander and see if it can actually do the job, which I'm hoping it's going to do. This is the joint on the floor. There's a bit of a ledge here, and so I just want to sand that smooth for when we put our flooring down. We're not going to be able to feel that through the flooring. Working fine. Well, all things considered, that was a pretty straightforward repair, and now it's working great. You've been in the basement. Thanks for watching.